What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Next Deal podcast. As always, we are here to help you find your next deal. Remember to like, subscribe, follow, give us a 5-star rating to really help us get this out there as much as possible. I'm your host, Justin Dossey, and your co-host, Vince Hall. Today, we are joined by a good friend of ours named Devin Robinson. Now, I had the pleasure of meeting Devin about a little over a year ago at a mastermind that we are both in, and I'm super excited to have him on this podcast. He's one of those people that immediately lights up a room, no matter where he's at. Even when he's coming back from a emergency surgery he had to have at the last event we're at, he still showed up to say hi to people. Quick intro to Devin, serial entrepreneur who has started, sold, crashed and burned 8 different businesses, 16 business ventures, and in his first 6 months in real estate investing did over 70 deals. One thing I like about Devin is he has a heart of gold and has a long-term goal of providing affordable housing to impact the lives of 10,000 families across 10 different states. So Devin, welcome, man. I'm super happy to have you here.
Oh, man, the pleasure's all mine. Super thankful to be here. I appreciate you. And I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, that surgery, it was actually better than people thought it was going to be. And so it didn't seem like a big deal, but people have been like, yo, that's crazy. And so I don't know. I just was like, yeah, of course I'm going to go. I'm in Tampa. I might as well come.
I think it's just how quick you were back at it. Like for people who don't know you, we all flew in for this event and Devin had to have his appendix removed, straight off the plane, went to the emergency room.
Yep.
And it's a 2-day event. 3 days technically, but night of day 2, Devin showed up, was shaking hands with everybody. So yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. You were just like straight up in pain on the airplane. And then you're like, something's wrong.
Yeah. So I was in pain. So Sunday morning is when it started. And I don't want to get too graphic, but it was bad for a long time. And then got better that night. So then that morning I was like, I think I'll be okay. I think I'll be all right. And then I was on the plane with Stephanie Betters, who's like a surgeon. And so we were going to get a ride back to the hotel. And I was like, I don't know. I've got something going on with me. I think I'm going to stop by my Airbnb first. And then she was like, look, I'm not one to be super overly cautious, but you should probably go to the hospital. And so I literally went with my bags straight to the hospital. And then I was like, hey, I think I need to get my something's going on with my appendix. And they were like, yo, get this guy in. And so they did scans. Wow. And then they were like, you need to have surgery today. Wow. And so, yeah, I was in a lot of pain, but it was amazing. And also I'm very glad I went because I actually made a crazy connection on the ride home, on the plane back home. So that is going to be a crazy, crazy connection. So
I was going to say, I was like, is that connection you made a deal in the hospital?
That's right. That's right. I made a wholesale deal in the hospital. Can you believe that? That's wild.
Yep. It always happens for a reason, right?
That's right. It does.
You know, it is. So.
Stephanie, that name rings a bell. Is she with Salesforce Left Main? Is that Stephanie?
She started it, owns it, runs it.
Yeah.
Created it.
Awesome.
Yep.
Perfect. Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's fantastic. Cool. And so people don't know this, but I think she was I think she was a nurse, but or I think she was a heart surgeon, one of the two, but she's doing that up until 2 years ago. Yeah, wow. So she's been doing all of this. And then that was her side thing, saving lives was her side thing.
just a weekend gig.
Yeah, it really was.
Just your all around superwoman on the weekends.
Yeah. She kills it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Joke. That's awesome. Good person to have on the plane with you.
Yeah, you ain't lying. There's no.
Dude, Justin, we need to get Stephanie on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll reach out to her. Let me make a note.
That was fantastic. That'd be fantastic. She's awesome. I love Stephanie. She's incredible.
That's super cool. I don't think I've got to meet her yet, but I know of the name, and I know a ton of people that use Left Main. Yeah. And it's seems to be growing very, very quickly right now. Mm-hmm. Well, cool, man. Let's kind of just start off. How'd you get started in business, right? You've got the personality of connecting with people very easily. I've gotten to know you decently over the last year or so, but kind of curious, how just you did some professional video game stuff for a little while, did that, and then, started doing the entrepreneur stuff. So I'm just kind of curious what got you started.
Yeah, man. So and that's funny. I played video games professionally, but it was one of those things. So this was 2007, 2008 when we'd win tournaments and they'd give,
So that's at the beginning of
exactly. That's exactly right. So we'd win tournaments and they'd give you a graphics card, and then it's this is cool, or you'd win you'd have to be the big dogs to win $50,000. And now they're giving 15-year-olds $5 million for winning a Fortnite tournament. So like so I got to college and I played baseball in college, and it got to the point where it was like, all right, either go to what's called, like, the game I play is called Counter-Strike. Either go to practice with my team on Counter-Strike or go to baseball practice. And people ask me all the time, like, what's the biggest regret of your life? This is probably the biggest regret of my life, was choosing baseball over that, because this is like 2007. I'm in my dorm and like I've got the PC and all that stuff. And in 2007 is when Twitch first like started. And I just feel like I've got the personality for Twitch. Like, I would have been on Twitch, I would have been playing, I would have been gaming. My life would look completely different right now if I would have just kept gaming throughout college and like been on Twitch and streaming from my dorm. Like, it would have been much different.
Bro,
but, like,
I could totally see my 15-year-old watching you on YouTube being like, I know this guy,
Heck yeah. But like, as you said, Justin, like, everything happens for a reason. I ended up and this kind of continues on to that like entrepreneurial journey. So I ended up graduating college, going into full-time vocational ministry. Got to the point though where I was running another company on the side, just because like I picked up a camera in college, people liked it. They were like, "Hey, you should, can you photograph my wedding for $500?" And I was like, oh, 500. I'm in college. I'm like, oh, $500. Yeah, cool. That sounds good. And then I'd get home to my wife and I'd be like, babe, they want to pay me $500. We're going to be rich. And I ended up, just for context, I ended up my last wedding photographing for $13,000. So like, that's like the context of like what, so $500 is like nothing, right? Like nothing at the time. And so then I ended up from there, was in ministry, photographing weddings, but then also doing ministry. And there's this theologian, his name is Charles Spurgeon, and he says, if you could do anything other than ministry, do it, because it's such a high calling to be in just like a full-time vocational ministry role. And I felt like God was giving me the desires to do other things. And so then I decided to go, okay, all right, I love business. I like this photography thing. I'm going to do that. So then ended up going in. Actually, I taught high school and coached football and baseball for a little while, and then went and did that. In like 2015, started that business, traveled the world. I've photographed weddings in like over 25 countries, like a lot of crazy things. And then started like marketing and media companies along the way, and did things like that, course creation companies where we'd do like masterclass level courses for people. So like really cool things along the way. And then I would say in 2021, during the golden era of real estate wholesaling, I jumped in because I saw somebody on Instagram or on TikTok, and they were like, hey, make money in real estate with no cash and with no credit. And I went to my wife and I was like, babe, you should try this. And she was like, no, I'm okay. And I was like, all right, I'll do it then. And so then I went in, I joined like this guy's Discord. I learned a little bit. And then I went to my mom and I was like, Mom, I think I want to try this thing called real estate wholesaling. And she's like, that's what I do, right? And I was like, what do you mean? Huh. And she was like, I work as an acquisitionist for a hedge fund, and I work with a ton of wholesalers. And so she essentially was like, here's how I do it. I go on Zillow for sell by owner and I negotiate with people. And she was like, go and do that. And so I just went on Zillow for sell by owner, negotiated with people, and she worked for Amherst. So she was like one of the 5 acquisitionists for Amherst, which was one of the largest home buyers during that time period. And she didn't give us any kind of like preferential treatment. We were very above board with all of that stuff, but like she was just our in. And so we would just go Zillow for sell by owner straight to her. And so it was me and my friends, and we would do that. And honestly, that ended up not working out very well at all. That was one of the biggest lessons I've ever learned. But we ended up doing 70 deals in the first 6 months. And then, as we all know, in November of 2021, the fund stopped buying and their buy box changed. And so the market dried up, and I was in CG, and I'm very thankful. So 2021, like August, I joined CG, and then I was in Premiere for a little bit. And so I spent the next, like, so we get to November, they dry up, and I get, so from 70 deals in 6 months to between November and February, 4 deals total. And so we crashed and burned. I had to lay off all of my staff. I had to move out of our office, like so many things. And then after that, I spent like the next 6 or 7 months head down, learning everything there is to know about real estate wholesaling, building out SOPs, putting all those in place to begin to scale once we started getting our first couple of deals. And so I would say in 2022, like July, August, started diving into foreclosures. And then from there, that's when we really like blew up. And then after that, ended up starting a fund and doing all kinds of different things. So it's been kind of wild.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So were the majority of your 70 all FSBOs?
Yeah, all of them.
Wow.
Every single one of them. Yeah,
insane.
that's crazy, isn't it?
That's insane.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah. And we would make like $20K on those FSBOs because the funds are buying at like 100 and 110% ARV. Like they were just buying. And so we would make like anywhere between 5 and 20K because funds, they cap your assignments at 20Ks. And so that's kind of where we would just land. It's kind of wild.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's cool.
So 10, 11 a month for 6 months and just slinging them left and right. Love it.
We really were, man. And it was crazy. It was one of those things where I didn't know though, but like I was like, oh, this is easy. This is kind of wild. Of course we could do a ton. But I didn't know what actual real estate wholesaling was. We never going direct to seller. We weren't doing any kind of like cold calling or texting. And I really should have been, but I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that this was only going to last 6 months. I didn't know that there were phases like this. I was like, yeah, these funds are going to be buying forever. And people are like, these funds are not going to buy forever. And I was like, well, it seems like they are. And then it crashed and burned and they weren't buying forever. So it's really interesting.
How did you pivot at that point? Because I know that was a pretty integral part for a lot of people at that point where it was like, I know in some like CG and my brother's coaching group, things like that, it was like, I don't have buyers anymore. Like what do I do with all these deals now? So I'm curious kind of what you did in that time.
Yeah, so we didn't have any buyers, right? That was our only buyer. And I actually didn't know anything about dispo. We didn't have a dispo department. We didn't have any of that stuff. So that's where like I just dove in right after that happened. I just put my head down for the next 6 months. And if you knew me, like I'm not an SOPs, like a systems and processes, standard operating procedure. I'm not that kind of guy. I am like in the clouds, thinking 30 years down the road. I guess historically I had not been that guy. And if you knew me in college, like not detail oriented, and even in my last businesses, but then I had to be for this. I knew that real estate was it though. So like I had these other businesses. I had the wedding photography business. I had photographers in all different states and different, like multiple photographers. And I could have gone back to that and it would have done really well. But I knew it was real estate. I knew real estate was it. I knew real estate is like the generational wealth aspect that I wanted to pursue with my life type thing at that point. And so I just was like, okay, I believe so strongly in this that I'm just going to put my head down. I'm going to learn everything I can. And then I started with the foundation because like that's what I got stripped down to was my foundation. And so then I just started from there, built the SOPs, put in processes in place to be able to build something that was actually going to be really great on. And so, I mean, really, when I say like 6 months, like I watched every video, I did everything in CG, like I did all these things and just put my head down and built it out. And then it ended up because like the lead measure was building out, but with like no money. The lag measure is now things are starting to come to fruition. We're starting to get deals. We're starting to make money. We're starting to do these things. And then we just started adding from there. And so it became a who, not how thing at that point. Then we started bringing on good people to be able to handle certain parts of the company. And then we scaled. Like, so imagine that's January 2022. We're January 2024. And like, I run a real estate fund now and I raise a ton of capital and we buy a ton of property and we do all these things, but only because I spent 6 months putting my head down, building a foundation that makes any of that possible. So it's been really interesting.
Yeah. That's an important thing is starting with a good foundation when you're building.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that'll make the exact opposite mistake, which sounds like you also had made this mistake. I've made this mistake where you're like, no, it's time to scale and grow and make, all this money. And then there's nothing solid at the bottom and everything falls apart pretty easily. You have to rebuild from it. So I love that. That's awesome. So one thing that I know you for, and I've seen you kind of do over the last year is a different way of wholesaling, right? Call it the installment method. I'm still learning about this a little bit more myself, but I don't think, because it's something so new that's kind of out there. I know like the CG community knows about it pretty heavily at this point, but what exactly is the installment method and why did you guys kind of start building that?
Yeah, this is cool, man. So, I actually didn't learn about it until I went to CG, and there's these guys down in South Carolina, and they are bigger wholesalers in South Carolina. They do a lot of deals. They actually also have a SaaS company, I think, and they were doing some stuff with hedge funds as well. But they were down in South Carolina, and we ran into each other at a dinner in CG, and they were asking me about what I do. And then I was like, oh, I wholesale in South Carolina. And they're like, really? And I said, yeah. And they were like, you know that they just passed legislation that essentially makes wholesaling in South Carolina illegal. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, we work with one of the 9 real estate commissioners in South Carolina. He's also a huge closing attorney. And they started their day. And in the beginning of that day, you could wholesale totally fine. They went into a meeting, and 15 minutes later, they had essentially outlawed wholesaling in South Carolina. And so really, and this is the thing that really got me, was like, I've got a family, right? Like I've got a family, I got kids. And in 15 minutes, the lives of people were changed because the way that they did something and ran their business was no longer allowed because 9 people decided that you're no longer allowed to do that in that state. And so I was like, holy smokes. Okay, like I don't like that. How do we mitigate that risk? Because South Carolina is a great state to do a lot of this stuff in, as far as if you want to hold property, then you've got great rental opportunity for cash flow. But then it's also, you got cities like Charleston, Columbia, Greenville that are really up and coming that people definitely want to wholesale in. And so I saw two things. One, I saw, okay, there's a risk that I want to mitigate, but also there's an opportunity that I want to take advantage of. Because then if most people can't do, or if like people are literally getting cease and desist letters in the mail because they're wholesaling and getting fined $20K an assignment, it was like, okay, so then if that's the case, that means that there's going to be a whole lot less competition in that state. So what does that look like for me to then take advantage of whatever? So they were telling me about this thing that they got together with that attorney who is actually one of the 9, and they created this thing called the installment method. Now, for context, installment sales have been around since the 1800s. Very typical, because like when you think about it, it's essentially like a land contract. That's how they didn't have banks back in the 1800s that were lending people $20,000 to buy a piece of land. Like they were creating installment contracts or land contracts with people to sell their land in the middle of the country nowhere in the United States. And so then it became really popular again during redlining. So in the 60s and the 70s, when minorities couldn't apply and get approved for a lot of these loans with the banks, they would create installment contracts with these sellers. And then it became extremely predatory towards buyers. So these buyers, if they would miss a payment, would get foreclosed on like immediately. And so then a whole bunch of legislation, very interesting, came out to protect buyers in these cases. So you've got a ton of case law in every single state of legislation created to protect buyers on installment sales, which is very interesting because most everything protects the sellers in these cases, but installment contracts protect buyers. And then like they were used up until the 90s, and then all of a sudden nobody used them anymore. For like 20 years, nobody used them ever. So you don't really hear about installment sales unless you meet an attorney that was doing them in the 90s, because for 20 years they just stopped. And so older attorneys know about them. Oh yeah, no, we used to do that all the time. And so then what happened was these guys, Jordan, Alex, and then this guy Gary Pickren, they essentially contextualized installment context to the current time and so then I was like, I'm gonna start doing those. So I started doing a bunch of those, and they're actually all we do. Because imagine, I was doing novations before, and I know you probably have talked about novations on here. I was doing novations, but then we'd run into the issue where like I'd go, hey seller, you're gonna see that I'm gonna make $100,000 on this deal, please sign, please. Like, please when you see that. And so like you run into that issue with novations. You also run with the other issues, but like this is not me being like, oh, I think they're all still like tools in the tool belt. Novations still have their context in which they're going to be good at. Sub twos have good context. This has a good context. And so or certain situations that those would be good at. So then after that, I just decided doing them. And essentially what it is I will go to a seller and, we'd give our cash offer. And if they're like, oh, I don't want that. Okay, well, then I think you may be able to do our installment program where we can then offer them more money or whatever. But we actually do an initial closing where I'd say, hey, Justin, what if I were to give you this amount and then also give you $500 now? Would that be helpful? And you're like, yeah, heck yeah, it'd be helpful for me to get that $500 now.
Yeah.
Then what we do is we do within the first like 5, 7, 10 days, however long it takes your title company to clear title and for you to do your due diligence, we would do an initial closing. In that initial closing, they would get a non-refundable equitable deposit. So it's essentially like our consideration deposit on that property. So that equitable deposit, they can use however they want. It's not like EMD that sits in escrow. They can't touch it. They could use it however they want. They can go and they can go buy a car with it. I don't care. But
their money.
Yeah, it's their money, but it's also our equitable deposit on the property. So then the title company then goes, and remember, this is the first 7 to 10 days. Title company goes and files an installment contract with the county. As they file that, it's fairly similar to like a lis pendens, right? So like they file that installment contract with the county. We now are listed on the title as having an equitable ownership on the title. Don't be confused. Like, we don't get the title. The title's not in our name. We have equitable ownership on that title. And so then after that,
that's because you put that deposit down.
Because we put the deposit down. Exactly. And then what happens from there? The seller actually signs the deed at that closing. So they sign that deed over. The title company holds that deed in escrow. And so then now I can go and do whatever I want on the B2C side. I can list it with an agent, and then I sign all the documents. No need for a POA. I can wholesale it. I can we actually have done a bunch of these. I can actually flip the property and then sell it because I don't run the risk of them selling the property out from under me. Whereas like a novation, people would be like, I'm not going to put money into there because what if they end up being like, yo, I like what you've done to the place. I don't think I want to sell it anymore.
That's my dream house now. Yeah.
So like they could always do that. But with an installment, they've already signed the deed. So literally what ends up happening is when I get my B2C signed, they just the title company will combine them and then record those deeds together. The great thing about that is that seller never comes back ever again to sign any other documents after that initial A to B. So they'll never see me making $100K. They'll never see what I made on it. They see what the initial settlement statement says is, I'm paying you my $500 now. And then when we go and sell on the back end, you'll get the remaining balance that's owed to you. What's also really cool is this becomes extremely seller centric in that you could craft your offers just for them. So like I've done $500 down, and then I've done $10,000 down. And then I've done, because I knew that was going to be an absolute banger. And then I've done, you could go, I'll give you $500 now. And then would it help if I covered your mortgage until we closed? Because what happens is when I do that, and then when I cover their mortgage until they close, it's credited back to me at closing. So it's not really even coming out of my pocket now. I get that money back. Or I go, I'll give you $500 a month until we close. Would that be helpful for you? And so then like my offer becomes significantly better than anybody else's offer because I'm putting money down. I'm giving them money monthly, and then it comes back to me credited at the closing. So it's wild. It's a really cool method. And then one of my other favorite things to do is actually like, because this has IRS tax law, this has title insurance will cover this, lenders will cover this. You actually, once you get that equitable ownership, it actually starts your seasoning period. So you could do like rate and term refinances, 30-year refinances on these as soon as you get on that title. Or if you hold it long enough, you could do a cash out refinance without ever having to purchase. So like, let's say you want to flip a property, but you don't have the cash, or you don't want to deal with like interest. You don't want to deal with paying the 15% down to originate the bridge loan. You don't want to have to do all that stuff. You can enter into an installment contract with somebody. And then if you have money out of pocket, you could flip with that money out of pocket or with a private lender and then sell on the MLS without ever having to buy the property in the first place. It's wild. So like, there's so many use cases that you could do on this, and even like a cash out. Right? Like you could do all that cash out without ever having to buy the property. Wild. So it's really cool. And so I'm just, this is all I do, man. It's just a safer way to do things. It protects us from what I call flight risks. We deal a lot with foreclosures. So you get a lot of people that are making really bad decisions historically. And then they'll go and they take your contract. You're in a contract with them. They're still trying to talk to other people and like sign contracts with other people. I've had somebody, we wired in funds and they signed with somebody else and closed with them. So this like locks that in because they sign away the title in the first 7 to 10 days. which is when they want their money as soon as possible. And they've already signed it away, so they don't have to wait another 30 to 45 days to get their money. It's already done. And then I don't have to worry about them signing with anybody else because it's already done. So it's wild.
Yeah. When you're doing that, how are you setting expectations with the seller as to like when they might have to move, right? Like obviously it's probably a case by case basis, right? But when you're going through that, are you doing that during that first 7 to 10 days? Like, hey, here's kind of what I'm thinking, or you get that done and then kind of figure that out afterwards?
Yeah, so that really depends on what your exit strategy is. If you're planning on flipping it, then you have that conversation with them a little bit earlier. We'll typically do the flips on vacant properties. If it's not vacant, then it's like, hey, you're going to get this. And then sometimes we'll hold like one of our installment payments will be when they move out. So like, hey, when you move out, we'll go ahead and give you $2,500, whatever. And so you can kind of do that however you want. Like if I plan on wholesaling, so we did one in South Carolina, we close on next week. When they moved out, we gave them the rest of what we owed them, which wasn't a whole lot because they were in foreclosure and they owed a lot in arrears. We actually used, and this is also really cool, we deal a lot with foreclosures, and we actually paid off the arrears as our consideration for the installment contract. Like we had to, because like we needed to reinstate the loan or else it would have went into foreclosure. So instead of paying them, we just paid the $21,000 that reinstated the loan. But I felt great about doing that because I had equitable ownership on the title. I wasn't worried about paying this off and them going, thanks, and then ghosting us. No, they've already signed away the deed. They've already done all those things. I'm fully protected in that time. So that's helpful. But then to answer your question, you can structure that however you want on like, I'll give you, when you move out, I'll give you this amount. And that makes it easier. Or you could just go on, when there's an escrow holdback on when we close on the BC until you get out type thing.
Got it. Vince, you're hearing this for the first time. So I'm curious as someone hearing it for the first time, what questions you have.
I was like, I got my pen right when
I saw you. I was like,
I'm going to click this bad boy right here and I'm going to start making some notes. I didn't make a single note, bro. I just started listening. So
sorry, it's recorded.
What's that?
I said it's recorded. It's okay.
No, I know it's recorded. I'm definitely gonna go back and listen to things, and I'm also thinking of our listeners, whose minds are spinning just like mine. Is there like a good resource that you know of that we could go to that kind of, would installment for dummies kind of thing?
Yeah. So, and this is also like, I'm such an open book and full transparency.
Yeah.
Those guys created a course. They essentially made me like the face of the course because I've used it the most. So there's a course, but I also have like a free course, like free thing that will walk you through like everything we just talked about, you through it on like a much easier level. Like go and get that. Ooh, I think it should be like, if you just go to installmentmethod.com, I think you should get it. Installmentmethod.com/freebies should have it. Let me check. Freebies. No, freebie. Do they know how to spell freebie? Yeah, freebie. Yeah. Freebie has a free course on it that you can just go ahead and grab. If you go to like my Instagram or whatever, like you'll see it there in my link in bio. But what I just told you would have it for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, because I was like, I'm gonna write some notes down, but then you would have saw like smoke coming up into the screen because I was writing so fast.
It's a lot.
But yeah, that's awesome, dude. I'll go check that out for sure. And all you listeners, check it out.
What?
And I was like, listeners, go check it out.
Yeah, and I'm also happy to like let's chop it up. Like I'll answer any of those questions. I'm a very, very open book about all that stuff.
Yeah,
I'm here to help, man. I'm just super happy to help.
So I want to go back at the beginning. Why did South Carolina make the decision to do that with wholesaling?
Okay, good question. So I don't know like the whole specifics. I do know that they went in and there was a case in which a wholesaler had essentially like screwed over this lady. And so then she reported it to the commission, and then the commission kind of made that decision. And then I do know that you look at Oklahoma, can't wholesale in Oklahoma. There's rules and regulations across like not every state. I think it's like 20 something states right now that are a little bit harsher than others. And then like, I can almost see that it's just once one state really does it, then the other states start to pick up on it and go, okay, like there's this is how they're doing it. Let's start regulating it in other ways. And I know that like as a whole, the real estate commission does not like wholesaling. So I would just imagine that as we get going, they're gonna fight harder and harder to be able to regulate wholesaling in general. Like I believe that you should be able to take something from somebody else's and buy it and sell it to somebody else. Like I just think that that is a right that we should be able to have. But this is also one of those things where like I don't have control over what the commission decides because they're not getting paid from it, and that's all they care about. And it's the same thing of like why. And now, like, I don't care. I'm not like super overly political or anything like that. But like, it's the same thing why marijuana wasn't legal until you could finally like tax it, right? Like, it's the same thing with the commission. And like, unless they can control it and get paid from it, they're going to regulate it. So that's just kind of what I think has is kind of just the state of real estate in general in the future. And so I don't know why South Carolina did it, but I do know they're not the only one. Theirs is just the harshest so far, but they're not the only one moving in that direction.
No, there's definitely a lot of states that I've heard from other people that it's getting more challenging. It might not be illegal yet, but it's a trend that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years of it just continuously getting more challenging. And every time I've talked to people about that or just like real estate in general, like there's always going to be a way to make money in real estate if you just know what you're doing, right? You just pivot, you change, you tweak, and doing things like the installment method, it gives you, I think it also gives you a leg up against everybody else in your market. Because most people, like, let's be honest, people are going to hear this and be like, that's cool. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
That's right.
But there's going to be 1 or 2 people that are going to do it, and they're going to start beating people out on deals. They're going to have better terms, better profits that they're going to make long term. Like it's going to work for those people that implement it.
People love like, people always ask me, they go, okay, so like, who's the ideal seller for this?
I was going to ask that actually.
All of them. For me, because like we do foreclosures, right? Foreclosures, they want money now. Like they want money now. I want to lock it in. Helpful for them. And then you deal with like I call big data, where these people who are high equity absentee owners are getting 10 calls a day. Now my offer is way better than anybody else's offer because I'm like, I'll give you $1,000 now and I'll pay your mortgage until we close. And they're like, shoot.
And then you're still making money at closing.
And then I now get to put it on the MLS and then get them more money. So like that, like whoever the niche audience for novations have been, like that's also this, except I get to now level up novations, which we thought was a level up from wholesale. So like it just is one of those things where like I say everybody, because everybody wants money now, but like also in the same way where we will help people move, like we'll help people to get to, because we know it's not all about money for the sellers. It's all about what helps them in that next season of life or whatever's the best service for them. So for us, like we have helped to I'll get people all the time that just text us and they're like, hey man, my car broke down. Can you give me $1,000? And it's like Venmo, pew, like there's $1,000. And like, they're like, holy smokes. I had a guy text me and he's like, you're my hero. Like you're my hero, because this guy was like, I'm having cancer treatment this week. I need $2,000 extra so we can get ready for our move.
And that's getting paid back to you at closing. So you know, like, hey, it's just coming out of at the end, and you know you're able to help that person then and there, and not say, hey, in 30 days you'll make 20 grand or whatever, right? Like I can help you today.
That's exactly right, because that's what most wholesalers offer is like, hey, I'll pay you in 30 days, hopefully, maybe. Like now I'm like,
if I can find a buyer.
Yeah. And so like but like now also like let's dive into that real quick, because this does separate, right? Like this is everything you put into it is non-refundable. So like if it's not a deal and you don't have a buyer, you are out that money, because it is a non-refundable, goes towards the purchase of that property. You can always, so like, let's say you don't end up selling it, we can always quit claim deed out of it, all those things, because you just have the equitable ownership on the title. This makes it a lot easier than something like if you were going to try to sub to it and then sell it, because like you take over the deed in a sub to and then sell it. In this, we're not taking over the deed. We just have equitable ownership on the deed. And so, or on the title or whatever. So like we don't actually have to worry about like this huge messy transaction in there. We just quit claim deed ourselves out of it if you can't sell it. But that's where we have set stipulations on. We will only do installments if we know that we're going to make 30,000 or more on it, because otherwise you do, right? Like, this is a little bit different where you do have to come out money out of your pocket to pay that equitable deposit and to pay for that initial closing, which depending on your state and who you use is going to be a couple grand. So like this really will separate wholesalers from investors. I think because like hot take here, like I just don't think wholesaling is investing. I think it's a sales and marketing company coming from sales and marketing companies. That's all this is. But like then you start getting into investing. I'm actually putting money down to invest into getting this property at a discount to then now like I have skin in the game, which the sell is to these sellers, because people would go, why would a seller agree to that? Why would they agree to have you on the deed or have you as a listed as equitable ownership on the title? Because then I go, hey, Mr. Seller, I'm able to go ahead and give you some money now. And what that's going to do is our title company is going to record that equitable deposit with the county. And so now I have skin in the game with you. So now I actually have it legally listed that I've invested into this with you, and I'm going to do everything I can to get you the amount that I've talked about. So like, then they're like, holy smokes. Yeah. That's
what I
better
was
than
gonna
everybody
say
else.
I feel like you're going to work a lot harder to get that deal done too, right? Like we try and stay in as many contracts as we possibly can, but inevitably there's ones that fall out, and it's probably because we didn't make the best decision when we put it under contract or something changed, right? But like you said at the beginning, this makes sure that it's a deal. Money you're putting out, you only get back if you sell this deal. Otherwise, like it's just gone, and you made a $10,000 mistake or $5,000 mistake, and you learn from that. But for me, like I'm working way harder on that type of deal to make sure that it gets sold on the MLS or flipped or however we want to do it long term.
Yep. And then like how many of those, and so you made a good point, like how many of those fall out and they're not your fault? They're the seller's fault because they wanted to back out of the deal or whatever. In this case, you have 100% follow through rate because they've already signed away the deal. So if you know you can sell it, 100% of them sell. It's not like a 30% drop off rate, which is
they get a $1,000 higher offer and they're like, well, I'm going to go with that one.
Can't do it. Great. Sorry, homie. Like, good luck. Go ahead. Good try it. That's not going to get close to the county. Like, so like because at that point you have to sign off on that.
Yeah.
At that point. So like, sorry about it. So you got 100% follow through rate once you get past that initial closing, which the initial closing, everybody wants their money. And if you go next week, I'm going to give you your money. They're like, heck yeah, I'll be there. But then when you go in 30 to 45 days, I'm going to get you your money. Then like, they're like, all right, I haven't heard from him in a couple of weeks. I'm just going to go talk to this guy now. So it's very different.
Yeah. I do love hearing your heart behind, doing all of this too. Just being like super benevolent with it. And I know you're not like, quote unquote in vocational ministry right now, but like how is this tying into that part of your life as well?
Oh, that's great, man.
Real estate. Yeah.
Yeah. So real estate as a whole. So I've got, my big dream. So we used to have this term, and Justin, you've probably seen me with the shirts and even my hat said people over profit. And that's kind of what we have. We've actually rebranded to say people through profit, because unless we make a profit, we can't serve as many people. And we have a really big goal of, like you said in the beginning, we want to transform the lives of 10,000 families in America by building and renting out 1,000 units of affordable housing in 10 major cities around the U.S. And we want to, because I think like you can mail your senators all you want, but unless you actually have influence, you can't really have big impact. And so we want to create through like my real estate fund, create really big influence that allows us to have that impact to be able to help change these lives of people. Because I grew up with a single mom in the hood of LA, and my mom did everything she could to give me the opportunity to live in areas that gave me opportunities to be where I am today. And still, I didn't make the best decisions, but she did everything she could. And so if we could help people do that, then that's a big deal of using like our influence to be able to create impact in this world. And so I was actually talking to somebody today. He's an investor in our fund, and he actually invests in and does a ton of affordable housing where, and I think this would be really cool because a lot of these don't fix the systemic issue that people have of never even having that kind of education. And so we were talking about how can we thread in the gospel with, and being able to help people not, and so like, I don't know what y'all believe in a lot of this, but somebody told him, they were like, hey, you could affect the way that they live their life, but at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that their soul is affected. And so for us to be able to come in and have the ability to do that through like, programs or whatever, but like they're doing this cool thing where people who live in their places who are renting from them, they have this option to be able to buy equity in that house, right? That then gets transferred over. So like they'll build a new house and they buy from the same guy, that equity will get transferred into their new house. So they're learning how to build that equity up and then transfer that into a home that they actually get to purchase and then have instant equity in. And so you're no longer just teaching people to live with affordable housing and to do these things, but you're teaching them how to actually build and learn and then create wealth through the investments that you're already currently making. And so like there's so many ways to creatively impact people's lives. And then also at the same time, like I said, like try to kind of make an impact on their souls and to be able to help to facilitate like those conversations. And so we're still figuring out a lot of that, because then you run into like regulations when you sometimes you run into regulations with those kind of things, but we're still trying to facilitate a lot of that. But I also think that like the way that I live my life and the way that I operate, I want people to know like what I stand for. And I think you'll always know what I stand for, because the same person you see on this podcast is the same person you see in person, is the same person you see when you go to the grocery store. It doesn't matter. Like I will unashamedly live out who I am. And my goal is for people to, one, see the way that I live, but also hear the things that I live for. Because like, people always say stuff, but does their life match it? I would rather people see my life and then hear me talk about those things. And then they're like, oh yeah, those two line up. Those two line up. So that's kind of where I think, and I think we do that with like not people over profit. Cause like that comes with this stigma or this like connotation of like, we don't make any money.
Right.
But like people through profit is like, the goal of why we make our money is to serve people. Like my fund is called PF Capital, People First Capital. Like that's what our whole fund is called. And then we have in our fund docs, 30% of the properties we own are to be allocated towards affordable housing. And in our fund docs, like we make charitable donations and serve foster care organizations here in Charlotte. And like that's just what we stand on, right? Like that's the foundations of what we stand on, is making an impact, not just making money. And sorry guys, I'm going, but like,
oh, you're good, man. Keep
dude,
going.
This is good stuff. Yeah.
But also like when I raise capital, I tell people like, sure, we're going to make you money, but the fact that your money is going to go and make an impact on the world, people are like, yes. And so I tell people, I go, I don't want your money if you just want to make money. Like we are not the ones for you. But if you actually want to make an impact with your money, then like we want to do that together with you. And that makes a huge difference as we raise capital, as we continue to do other projects. It's a big difference. And like people know that from the jump about us. So
yeah. I love that, because it's something to like when you start making money, if you've never made money before and you start making money, you learn very quickly that it's a good tool, but the impact is where it matters, right? Like that's something that I'm trying to figure out now, is like how do I do that kind of stuff too, right? Like, because that's where my heart is too, is I want to have as much impact as possible. And like making money's cool. Yeah. Like I want to make money, but I also want to affect like my community and people around me and help people that maybe just don't know where to start or what to do. And like, we grew up pretty lucky, like middle class, that kind of stuff. But like, I didn't know anything. Like I was dumb as a box of rocks when I graduated high school. Like I didn't know anything on how to run business, how to make money, how to do anything. So, but I only learned that from people willing to pour into me and help me without me paying them at first. Right. And now I pay to be in those types of groups, but that's how I think everybody, most of the people, there's exceptions to the rule, but most of the people I know, it's like, once you start making money, they're like kind of bored, right? Like they're like, what else can I do with this?
Yeah. I've been seeing it in you too, Justin. With the Entrepreneur's Edge, when you're offering your coaching service. No, I'm like seriously, like I'm not one of the top commenters in that Facebook group or anything like that, but I do read them and I do see stuff, and people are super thankful for what you're doing, and I like when you are offering your time, and even just me personally, like you and Ryan have poured into me a crap ton more than and Devin, just to kind of give you some background on Justin and I'm a Swiss Army knife at ballpoint and call porter. but I'm also a Swiss Army knife just at life in general. So I've, was 8 years military. I was also in vocational ministry, was a pastor
Nice.
at the church that Justin used to go to, and actually worked with his mom.
Nice.
Where I met my wife. Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I was, in vocational ministry there. I was also a science teacher as well. And, now real estate is the name of my, of my game. But
Yeah,
that's kind of where, Justin and I came from.
that's cool.
Back in the day, was just knowing each other through, the church that we were involved in.
Yeah.
And he's got good rents, his parents.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
They do. They're
Dad
good
works
people.
for us now.
Yeah.
More
Nice.
with us than for us, but yeah, it's cool.
That's fantastic, man. I love it.
Yeah.
It's good because at the end of the day, like, it's all about the impact that you can make it. Like, what's the legacy you want to leave in this world? Because all this stuff goes, right? They always say you can't take it with you when you're gone. There's no U-Haul following the hearse. And so, like, what's the impact you want to leave? What's the legacy you want to leave? And you know what's actually really interesting? I was talking to somebody in my small group the other day, and they're like, yeah, my dad is really high up at this giant company. And he's like, I want to make an impact in the world for this company. And she sat there and she was like, what about the impact you want to make in our family? And so, like, or like in my kids, because like he's not very present in their life right now. And so I was like, man, I want to make, because like even going back, right? 10,000 families in America. Like, I want to impact 10,000 families in America. And then I have to remind myself, what's the impact that I want to make in my kids' life? Because that's a good goal, like changing the lives of people around this world. But at the end of the day, like, what's the legacy that you want to leave in your family? In your family's life, because my kids will grow up not how I grew up. I grew up around gangs and drugs. My kids are not going to grow up around. They're going to grow up in a private school and like all this air. And so it's like very different from how I grew up. And like, what's the legacy that I want to leave in their life, and then they could pass down to their kids and all of that stuff. Because and you said it earlier too, you can make all the money, and this is a constant quote that you hear from people of like, you can make all the money in the world, but you don't really feel wealthy until you start giving it away. Like, you don't feel that wealth until you start giving it away, because that's the thing that really makes you feel a sense of purpose. And that's why so many billionaires, I think like the highest majority of people that commit, but it's like there's a high statistic of wealthy millionaires, billionaires that commit suicide because they get up there and then they go, I say they climb the ladder of success on the wrong wall, right? They get up to the top of that ladder and then they go, what was all of this for?
Right.
And then they realize like there was no purpose behind what they were doing. And then they feel empty and then they feel alone and they feel like this didn't really fulfill me like I thought it was. And I've accomplished everything that I've ever thought I could dream of. And what was it all for?
Yeah.
And so like then their families don't talk to them, and then they don't have people, because like all of that stuff becomes like that was what went to the wayside, so they can kind of climb the ladder of success on this wrong wall. And so it's really interesting when it comes to money.
Yeah.
And what it can actually do for you, and how you can feel and use it.
Yeah. Susie and I are, by no means, we're not rolling in money, like Scrooge McDuck style or anything like that.
Yeah.
We're comfortable though. We're comfortable and we're very happy. And you're right. Like I know people who make far more money than I do, and they're miserable.
Yeah.
They're absolutely miserable. One of them, was a family member of mine. I won't name him on the podcast, but I looked up to him so much as a kid, thinking like, man, I want to be like him. And he fell apart, all because, he, like you said, he climbed the ladder on the wrong wall. And it's just perspective on where, money is very helpful. It's not everything. Pouring into your kids, pouring into your community, showing up at your kids. I was able to go to last week to an award ceremony for my 6-year-old daughter,
Awesome.
to be present there. That's cool stuff, right? Like that's what really matters at the end of the day. And I would rather be, comfortable in where I am now than miserable and have $1 million in my account.
Well, and there's too, I had somebody tell me, it was one of my first like mentors I worked with, I think, but he said like money doesn't fix problems. Like it helps, like there's different problems, right? But what it really does is it amplifies who you actually are and what's actually going on inside. And that's where when people get to that high level of success and they don't work on any of that or grow or do any of that, and it's all about the money and the business. And like you said, you get there and you don't have a wife anymore, your kids don't talk to you, you might have burned friends, like all that kind of stuff. Like there was no purpose behind it, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an important distinction.
Yeah, people always say, "Oh, like money changed him." Money didn't change him; amplified and it magnified who he really is. Like, you know, just it's really what it is.
Yeah,
that's the crazy thing about money is it'll do that. It'll do that.
Yeah.
Let's show you who someone
talk
is real
family.
quick.
What's that?
I would say it'll show you who somebody is really quickly.
Yeah. Let's talk family real quick, Devin. You know, the business life balance, you know, everybody's always trying to like, how do we do this? You know, like, is it even a thing, you know? And, you know, like, what does that look like for you? You know, I'll just give it a prime example. It just happened with me yesterday, you know, busy day, go and get the kids home from school. Susie's home. I still have things to do. I still have tasks to do. You know, kids run in, drop their backpacks down. And I'm like, hey, I got some things I got to do. I got to go downstairs and work. Right. Mm-hmm. And then a couple hours later, she very well let me know. Didn't even get a kiss. Didn't even get a hi. How are you doing, babe? And I just get defensive. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, I got this to do. I got this email. I got this. I got to return this call. And and it hurt her. You know what I'm saying? And that was just a little thing. And I'm still, you know, trying to like figure out like, so like, what does that like look like for you? Because real estate's busy. It is. And how do you manage that?
Yeah, I think, so I love that you said balance. Balance just doesn't exist. I just don't think that's like a thing. Yeah. I think, one, it's subjective, but also I think what's more important is like order, right? So we talk about in our company, we talk about order. So like, if your order is wrong, then everything else is unhealthy in your life. So for us, it's like, for me specifically, it's God and me. If that's not healthy, nothing else is going to be healthy. Then it's like me and my wife, because I believe that my wife is above me and my kids. My wife is my best friend. Like when we talk to like, if like me and my wife are talking and my kids, so we've got 6, 5 and 2. And then we've got one on the way. But like with me and my wife are talking and the kids, I'm like, hey, hold on. Daddy's talking to his best friend right now. Like daddy's talking right now. We'll give you a second, because like they need to feel the stability of that relationship, of that friendship, that nothing can get in there, not even them. And so that's 2. And then of course, like my kids, and then it goes into work and things like that. And so I try to be fiercely protective of that time for me, but also for my employees. Like I've had buyers be like, hey, Darius isn't answering his phone right now. And I'm like, because Darius is with his family. Like, like
6 p.m.
matter.
Bro. Yeah.
Yeah. Like tomorrow, talk to him tomorrow. Like this is not a thing. So like we instill that culture in our work. Like when people are like, hey, so sorry I was late because of this, I go, hey, never apologize for family. That's never a thing that gets apologized for us in any context, is for family. You just go, hey, my kids were here. I had to do this. I'm here now. Like that's just the context in which we try to operate our business in. And I think it's very different where overwhelmingly when we get new people into our company, they're like, oh my gosh, I've never been in anything like this before, because the corporate is just like this and that. You got to fill out a tardy slip. Like it's just crazy. But like for us, we manage that in our company, but also in my life. So again, like so one is there has to be a right order, but then also the second is like I just operate off of like an abundance of communications and managed expectations, because like that's when things go south, is when you have unmet expectations in a relationship, and a lot of that happens because of lack of communication. So I just try to overly communicate with my wife, and she still would probably say that I do not do the greatest job at it, which is okay. And I would say like I just do not do the greatest job at it, but like I try to do what I can, because I think once you've communicated enough to meet those expectations, or to communicate through those expectations, then it becomes a lot easier to create that order in your life. So then it's not a work-life balance, because like some seasons are going to be way more than others. I know though right now, like what my day looks like is I get up very early. So like very, very early. And then I get my kids ready for school. My wife will take the kids. And currently I'm taking the kids sometimes just because she's not feeling super well. I used to pick them up every day, non-negotiable, but now that my wife doesn't work anymore, she picks them up. And then if I go back into an office, I'll probably pick them up again, because that would just make sense. But I work from home right now. So that's kind of where he is. And my wife and I, we we foster kids. So we have fostered 5, adopted 3. And so, yeah, so we have 3 that we've adopted and then 1 on the way. So
Wow.
kind of crazy.
Yeah. Congrats on that, by the way.
Very thankful. Very thankful. I appreciate you, man. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. I definitely know Justin and I both know the, the crazy schedules with kids and just all the things that, that go into life.
Yeah. Because again, it's funny because you see, I think what happens, this gets really funny. I actually start to, and I think we all do it, right? Comparison is the thief of joy. We tend to compare ourselves to other people. And then I realize like, oh, they don't have kids. I no longer compare myself to them because like our life will just never be the same. Like we are just totally not the different. Same. No, there's like no comparison there because like you don't even live in the same. Like we're not even playing the same game.
No,
not at all. So like it's just funny when I see stuff like that and then I'm like, oh, you don't have kids. Okay, that makes sense. All right.
Yeah. That explains a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not getting waken up in the middle of the night 5 times. Got it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
No wonder.
No, I love the communication part you said too, man. That's something that I'm a little hard-headed and it took me a while to learn that one. Like we just had our 15-year anniversary and I've gotten much better at it. Thank you. I wasn't always that good at it. I would just be like, well, you should just know I have this going on Friday. Like, how dare you not know this? But like, even like just simple little things. Like I have I'm guest speaking for a group tomorrow night and it's 2 hours. It's from 6 to 8 PM. I totally forgot about it until Monday. And I was like, dude, as soon as I know, I'm letting my wife know. So she knows. And she was like, cool. Thanks for letting me know. She's like, that sucks, but thanks for letting me know. I'm like, all right, cool.
So at least you didn't let her know like the day of and was like, oh, hey, babe.
Yeah. Hey, by the way,
15 minutes prior.
Yeah. By the way, I got to get on this call.
And still like, hey, chief of sinners, like I still do that. And so, so I'm thankful for my wife. She gives me a ton of grace and mercy that I definitely don't deserve, but like I'm super thankful for her in that. And it comes because like she knows that those aren't my intentions to not do that. That's just how I am. I'm sorry, babe. Because she's known me for so long. But yeah.
And my last thing I'll say to what you had talked about is like my wife and I are very similar. Like my wife's my best friend. Like I actually enjoy hanging out with my wife. I look forward to it. Like just whatever it is. It could be sitting on the couch, it could be going for a walk. It could be playing basketball in the front yard, like whatever it is. Like, but that's something that we do with our kids too, is let them know like, hey, like your mom always comes first and I always come first with her, and seeing that. And for us, that's served us very, very well in our relationship, where I have a lot of friends where like they're married and like they're barely friends at all. And I'm like, I don't know how that works. I don't understand how that process works. So yeah, that's something too. Like if you're listening to this, like, and you don't have that type of relationship, try and work towards like having your spouse be your best friend. Like that is a great point.
Yeah. Susie and I are also flirty in front of the kids.
Yeah.
My oldest is 15. And nothing goes over his head anymore, you know? And so sometimes we'll say something to each other and he'll be like, oh my God, Dad, like, no, you know? And
I'm like, my 13-year-old.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, like I want them to see that, you know, we have that interaction, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it's just funny because, you know, the 15-year-old just is like, okay.
Well, and even on like a different context on that. So like my wife and I, as we fostered, we've had kids in our home who have never ever in their life seen that. Right. Like they've never had a male actually show any sort of affection to them and love them well, or tell them, like, give them a kiss, but they've also never seen a man and a woman have that love for them. And so for you to give that as an example, to show that even like in public, show like people, there's a lot more people than you think that have never had that displayed or that example for them. And so they have no idea what it's like to be in a healthy, or look at it and see a healthy relationship in a marriage. And so for us to live that example for other people, and for the kids that come in through our home, are just so important, because it's also very taken for granted in our context. Because like I grew up with a single mom. Like I never saw that in my life. And so it's a really good thing to have and to show it just honestly,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you do that.
Living by example, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Well, good.
awesome. This was fantastic, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Oh,
We'll share that link that you shared with the
sure.
installmentmethod.com/freebie when this goes live.
Yeah, I'm going to that for sure.
Yep,
It's cool. It's there's some, it's incredible. It's really wild.
Awesome. Well, cool, man. Thank you for coming on and showing up and helping out and giving all the value that you give. Looking forward to, of course, seeing you soon in person, but thanks again for coming on today, man.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys. Appreciate you.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.